1 year after the Boston Tea Party, Parliament hit Massachusetts with the Coercive Acts of 1774, a series of 4 punitive and restrictive laws. In the American colonies, they quickly became known as the Intolerable Acts. That same year, delegates from every colony but Georgia gathered in Philadelphia. It was the First Continental Congress. Massachusetts delegate Sam Adams called for a Declaration of Independence. Virginia's George Washington counseled delegates to prepare to defend themselves. All the delegates were united in their desire to be rid of Britain's coercive rule over her American colonies. They appealed to the king in the form of a petition. It fell on deaf ears. That did not deter the colonists. From the farms of New England to the House of Burgesses in Virginia, American patriots prepared for war. The 4 Coercive Acts were enacted on May 20th, 1774. The Boston Port Act blockaded the Boston Harbor. The Massachusetts Government Act shackled representative government by giving the Crown the power to appoint members of the Colonial Council and restrict town meetings. The Act for the Impartial Administration of Justice allowed the governor to transfer court trials of British officials to England, thereby eliminating the practice of trial by one's peers. The Quartering Act was the only one of the 4 acts forced on all 13 of the colonies. It allowed British officers to demand better housing for their soldiers at the expense of the colonists. Allegedly, the 4 acts were intended to preserve peace and order in the increasingly restless colonies. American colonists took them for what they truly were, punishments, and intolerable ones at that. On January 25, 1774, angry Bostonians tarred, feathered, and beat the British Customs House officer, John Malcolm. General Thomas Gage, commander of British forces in America, knew that in order to control the rebellious colonists, he had to keep them from building stores of gunpowder and musket balls. On September 1, 1774, Gage's troops covertly seized 250 half-barrels of gunpowder from the provincial powder house 6 miles outside of Boston. News of the seizure spread. So did rumors that the British had killed 6 militiamen and had fired cannons on the Boston Harbor. Some 4,000 colonial militiamen from across New England made their way to the outskirts of Boston, ready for battle. They reached Cambridge before they learned that the rumors of violence were false. General Gage was alarmed, taken aback by the level of the colonial response. 3,000 regulars could not control an armed rebellion in America. He asked for as many as 20,000 troops at whatever cost it would take. The British government ignored his request. Still, Gage knew he had to control colonial military supplies. In December, he sent troops to seize the gunpowder and arms at Fort William and Mary in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire harbor. Paul Revere rode the 60 miles north to warn his fellow colonists that the regulars were coming. 400 New Hampshire militiamen beat the British to the punch and hauled away 100 barrels of gunpowder before the redcoats arrived. On January 29, 1775, Ben Franklin, who was in England at the time, was called before the King's Privy Council and berated as an anti-British agitator for more than an hour by the King's Solicitor General, Alexander Wilderburn. The spectators mocked Franklin. Philadelphia's most famous citizen had in reality been a firm advocate for striking peace with the British. When Wilderburn had finished his tirade, Franklin left without comment. He then met with William Pitt, the Earl of Chatham. Together they worked on a plan to end the conflict between Britain and her American colonies. More than any other public official, Pitt had been responsible for British victory in the 7 Years' War. Surely his plan would be taken seriously. It wasn't. Parliament rejected the plan with contempt. Weeks later, Franklin left for Philadelphia, a fierce patriot and an enemy of Britain. It was a good thing that he set sail when he did, for an order for his arrest had been issued. In February 1775, the British tried to seize cannons at Salem, Massachusetts. Again, the locals were warned and secreted the cannons to a hiding place. In anticipation of armed rebellion, Gage sent officers to map the roads west of Boston. They were disguised in civilian clothing. The local colonists were not fooled. Colonists sent support to their besieged allies in Massachusetts, cattle from New Hampshire, rice from South Carolina, food supplies from across New England. In New York, angry colonists burned effigies of British officials, including one of Lord North, British Prime Minister. In Farmington, Connecticut, colonists set fire to a copy of the Boston Port Act. Back in London, officials were confident their American subjects would not actually fight. Even General Gage, alarmed as he was by the unrest in and around Boston, thought that if war came, it would be confined to New England. Little did he know. Already, just after the new year, George Washington had charged the men of Fairfax County, Virginia, to join the militia. On March 23, 1775, at a meeting in St. John's Church, Richmond, Patrick Henry called for a resolution that Virginia be immediately put into a posture of defense. Richard Henry Lee and Thomas Jefferson agreed. Others argued against provoking the British any further. Patrick Henry rose to his feet. He began softly, but as he spoke, his voice grew louder. Henry ended his speech with words that hold a permanent, iconic place in American memory. The next gale that sweeps from the north will bring to our ears the clash of resounding arms. Our brethren are already in the field. Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear, or peace so sweet, as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God. I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. On April 19th, just 3 weeks after Patrick Henry set his course for liberty, the clash of arms resounded from Massachusetts in the north, at Lexington Green and North Bridge in Concord.